Somebody has to work or society will collapse. This is a common rebuttal that I've gotten to a lot of my videos, and it is a fair question to ask. Now, of course, with how trash modern society is, you can easily make an argument that it deserves to collapse anyways, but let's put that aside for this video and just hypothetically assume for the sake of argument that we all want to keep society running. Gen Z is totally disillusioned with work these days, and they absolutely should be. We've talked about this in pretty much every video on this channel up until this point, but if all of them checked out of society and stopped working, wouldn't society collapse? I mean, somebody has to work, right? Well, it turns out the world and the economy isn't quite so black and white. There are a lot of nuanced layers behind how complicated ecosystems like economies function, and when you dive into the nuances of it all, you'll see that not only is it not bad for society if young people don't want to work, it might actually benefit society. Off the top of your head, what do you think is the ideal unemployment rate for society? Common sense would tell you it's 0%, right? I mean, in theory, it should be a good thing if everyone has a job. But as previously mentioned, the economy is not such a simple black and white picture. It's complicated with many nuanced layers behind it. Most economists actually agree that an unemployment rate of around 5% is what's actually ideal. There are a number of reasons why a 0% unemployment rate isn't desirable or realistic. For example, a 0% unemployment rate would mean no one is looking for a job, which would stifle innovation and the growth of new businesses, as people are unlikely to take risks and start new ventures. Also, if you're sick of this ridiculous inflation and how expensive everything is, did you know that one way you can combat this is by being unemployed? That's right, take a look at this article headline from Reuters in 2022. The US may need a 7.5% unemployment rate to curb inflation. This is because if unemployment is too low, there would be a shortage of workers, which could lead to higher wages and inflation, potentially overheating the economy. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for higher wages. I think we all need to and deserve to get paid way more. But it's just an undeniable mathematical and statistical reality that is going to make prices go up as well. Now, according to the Department of Labor, Gen Z comprises about 18% of the total workforce. Remember earlier that the Fed said an unemployment of 7.5% is necessary to curb inflation? This means that if about half or a bit less than half of Gen Z who are currently actively working quit their jobs and refuse to work, like a lot of them want to do, not only would this not lead to a societal collapse, it would actually be beneficial for the economy and help fight this absurd inflation that we're all so sick of. So, the next time someone shames you as a burden to society for not wanting to work, you can tell them that they're technically just as big of a burden as because by working, they're actually contributing to inflation. I know I probably pissed off a bunch of delusional boomers and corporate shills with that last statement, but guess what? None of what I just said is my own personal opinion. These are all official sources from official government data, economists, and even the Fed itself. Okay, let's take a quick second to address the elephant in the room I'm sure you're all wondering at this point. But how do you survive and pay your bills without a job? I've sort of glossed over this point in my more recent videos because I've already made countless in-depth guide videos on how you can survive without a job. But to be fair, a lot of you are new viewers, and so I should have done a better job addressing this point. I'll take accountability for that. So let's quickly address this right here. There are many ways to survive without a job in the modern day and age. The easiest way to survive without a job, of course, is if you just simply live with your parents and or collect welfare. The hard part about this is dealing with the psychological shame and stigma from society. So if someone shames you, you can just point out that Elon Musk literally collects billions of dollars of welfare money every year, and no one has a problem with that whatsoever. So they can shut up about your $200 per month of food stamps or whatever it is you're receiving. It is a tiny rounding error compared to the enormous amounts of welfare rich people receive. that no one seems to have an issue with. Now, I get that living with your parents isn't an option for everyone. A lot of us have asshole boomer parents who either won't let us move back, or if they do, they'll make our lives an absolute living hell while we live with them. So, if this is the case for you, the easiest way you can survive without a job is simply to use food banks where you can get free food that would have been thrown out anyways. You can volunteer in exchange for free accommodation. And if you can manage to secure even a small source of online remote income, you can move abroad where living expenses are much cheaper and live comfortably for as little as $700 or $800 per month. There are countless more other ways to get by without a job as well. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through all of them in this video. I've posted links to all the in-depth videos I made about how to survive without a job in the description and in the pinned comment. So feel free to check those out after this video. So hopefully this answers the question of, but how do you survive without a job? So now that you know how to survive without a job, let's go back to talking about why it's actually good for society if Gen Z doesn't want to work. The toxic codependency. Gen Z not wanting to work is not a one-way street. Employers clearly don't want to hire them either. The headlines are everywhere that they hate working with Gen Z. They're actively refusing to hire Gen Z. And in the rare case they do hire them, they rapidly fire Gen Z en masse and are proud of it. I agree that young people not working would be a bad thing for society if they were clamoring for us to work and we just all refuse to do it. But clearly this isn't the case. Clearly, employers hate working with Gen Z just as much as Gen Z hates working. So, if both sides hate each other and want nothing to do with each other, why are we so obsessed with shaming Gen Z for not wanting to work? Employers clearly don't want to deal with them anyways. This would be like if you had an insanely toxic and abusive relationship with someone and you both mutually agreed to break up because, it's a toxic and abusive cesspool. Then society steps in and calls you lazy for leaving this abusive relationship and be like, hey, but someone has to have kids to keep society running. The kid isn't going to have a good life in that situation anyways. And in the same exact way, shaming Gen Z for not wanting to work when companies don't want to hire them anyways isn't going to help anyone, even if they do get a job. Both sides are just going to hate each other and not get anything productive done. It is not going to contribute to society anyways. It's just such a weird, obsessive fetish society has about work. We're so obsessed with work to a point where we forcefully shame people for not wanting to work, even when both sides mutually agree they don't want to work for each other. Weird fetishes aside, however, there's also a deeper story this tells when employers clearly don't want to or need Gen Z to work. The fact that the youth unemployment is so high clearly shows that society is doing just fine without young people working. If society was literally on the verge of collapse because young people don't want to work, trust me, you would know it. You would have insane bargaining power if that were the case. You'd be able to easily get a job and you'd instantly be able to demand very high wages for it. Now, we all know clearly that's not the case right now. In fact, it's the opposite. But the economy was like that for your boomer parents. Back then, it was easy for any young person to get a job, and even minimum wage entry-level jobs paid relatively well. Why? Well, back then, the economy was very different. The post-war economic boom created a huge demand for factory construction and manufacturing jobs that valued youth because of their more hands-on physical nature. Needless to say, we live in a very different time now. Most of those jobs have been automated away, and in the age of information, everything is about experience, which doesn't favor younger workers. This is why you see even entry-level jobs needing 3 to 5 years experience. A lot of countries are saying they're facing unrest because their economies can't create enough jobs for young people to work in. What does this tell you? This twisted, outdated cultural mindset that work is the default human state and that everyone has to work, or that they're lazy for not wanting to work, has burdened society far more than young people not wanting to work. It is legitimately and objectively a burden to try to force create more jobs in an economy where natural market forces are clearly not demanding for it. This is only going to get worse as AI develops and replaces more and more of the workforce. I recently had a bit of an epiphany, which I made an entire post about. I'm not actually anti-work per se. I just don't want to work myself. And I don't think everyone should be forced to work through brute force or social shaming. Work is just another activity, like art, sports, or video games. I personally enjoy sports, and I'm not very good at art. But that doesn't mean I'm anti-art. If you want to spend your days painting beautiful pieces of art, go for it. More power to you. I promise you, I will not stop you. And it's the same thing with work. If you want to work, go ahead and work. I promise you, I will not stop you. But shaming me as being lazy for not wanting to work is as dumb, nonsensical, and ridiculous as me calling you lazy because you don't want to play sports just because I personally want to play sports. This is why we should just have a universal basic income so that if you don't want to work, you don't have to. And if you want to work, you'll just make a lot more because unemployment has statistically been proven to reduce inflation, and you won't have to constantly be competing with millions of new young people flooding the labor markets every year. Everyone gets what they want. Everyone's happy. Everyone wins. Another and perhaps the biggest Gen Z specific reason that not working would benefit society more is because Gen Z specifically is probably, I would say, the most entrepreneur mindseted generation alive today. They would rather take risks to try and become an influencer or start their own business than work a soulless 9 to 5. And the thing about constantly being forced to labor in the daily 9 to 5 grind is that it stifles so much potential innovation and creativity. So many young people have so many incredible business innovation ideas that could potentially change the world for the better. But it's all being stifled because they have to spend all their time working for the man, making someone else rich. Think about how many new ideas and innovations we could see if an entire generation was set free to let their own ideas run wild, rather than continuing to work for and feed into the broken system. This is another reason I just don't buy the logic that if we had something like a universal basic income, people just would stop working. This is based on the assumption that no one has any ambition and everyone only wants to live off the bare minimum. And I just don't buy it. I just don't buy the idea that people only want to eat, live, and sleep. Sure, maybe some people might be like that, but I think the overwhelming majority want more out of life. And all their brilliance and ingenuity is being stifled by these stupid, outdated cultural norms around work. But alas, unfortunately, we don't have universal basic income yet. Meaning, if you don't want to work, you'll have to figure out how to survive without a job. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have plenty of great videos on how to do exactly that right here on this channel. Here is a great one I recommend to get you started. Check it out. Thanks for watching. I'll see you there.